The Caffey family appeared to be the embodiment of a wholesome, God-fearing life. Terry and Penny Caffey, Erin's parents, were devout Christians who raised their children in a tightly knit, faith-centered environment. Terry worked hard as a medical professional, dedicating himself to providing for the family, while Penny was a devoted homemaker and an active member of their local church. Erin, the oldest of 3 children, was homeschooled alongside her younger brothers, Matthew and Tyler. The siblings were inseparable, spending their days learning, playing, and participating in church activities. Their home was filled with music, as Penny often played the piano, and laughter that echoed through the walls, at least on the surface. Religion was the cornerstone of the Caffey household. Weekly church services, Bible study sessions, and family prayers were rituals that bound them together. Erin herself was a bright and lively girl, known to sing in the church choir, assist with community events, and bring joy to her family. From the outside, they seemed to have it all: faith, love, and a strong moral compass. But appearances can be deceiving. Erin's teenage rebellion clashed with her parents' strict values, creating a growing rift that would later erupt into unimaginable tragedy. Every tragic story has a turning point, and for Erin Caffey, that moment came when she met Charlie Wilkinson. Charlie was the kind of boyfriend any conservative parent might dread, a rebellious 19-year-old with a rough edge that drew Erin in like a moth to a flame. Their relationship ignited quickly, fueled by teenage passion and a mutual desire for freedom. For Erin, Charlie represented an escape from the constraints of her strict upbringing. He was older, charismatic, and dangerously different from anyone she'd known. To Charlie, Erin's sheltered world was both intriguing and ripe for rebellion. The two were inseparable, but their romance soon veered into toxic territory. Friends described their relationship as intense and obsessive, with Erin doing everything to keep Charlie happy, even at the cost of her family's trust. When Terry and Penny Caffey caught wind of their daughter's relationship, they were deeply concerned. As devout Christians, they believed Charlie was a bad influence, leading Erin down a dangerous path. They tried to intervene, imposing stricter rules on Erin and forbidding her from seeing him. This only added fuel to the fire. The tension escalated, and Erin began pushing back against her parents' authority. Her once happy demeanor shifted into one of defiance. For the first time in her life, Erin felt torn between two worlds: the stable, loving home she had grown up in and the thrilling, chaotic freedom Charlie promised. The situation came to a head when Terry and Penny forced Erin to break up with Charlie. Devastated and furious, Erin confided in Charlie about her anger and frustration. According to later court testimony, Erin casually joked about how her life would be easier if her parents were dead. For Charlie, this offhand remark planted a dangerous idea, one that would grow into a sinister plan. What started as a teenage romance spiraled into a toxic, destructive bond. Erin, desperate to prove her loyalty to Charlie, began to see her family's love and guidance as oppressive. Charlie, fueled by a mix of possessiveness and bravado, became the driving force behind the plot that would ultimately tear the Caffey family apart. The stage was now set for one of the most shocking crimes the community had ever seen. The night of March 1st, 2008, started like any other in the small, peaceful community of Alba, Texas. The Caffey family had no idea that their world was about to be torn apart in the most unimaginable way. In the early hours of the morning, Charlie Wilkinson, along with his friend Charles Wade and Wade's girlfriend Bobby Johnson, arrived at the Caffey family home. Armed and prepared to execute a plan fueled by rage and revenge, they parked down the road to avoid detection. Erin was not at home. She was allegedly waiting elsewhere, shielded from the immediate carnage that was about to unfold. Charlie and his accomplices entered the house under the cover of darkness. The attack was swift and brutal. Terry and Penny Caffey were asleep in their bedroom when they were ambushed. Charlie and Charles Wade shot Terry multiple times and then turned their attention to Penny. She was not spared the horror, stabbed and shot before being left for dead. The noise woke Erin's younger brothers, Matthew and Tyler. The boys, aged 13 and 8, were defenseless against the attackers. Charles Wade, showing no mercy, turned the gun on them, extinguishing their young lives in moments. To ensure there were no survivors, the attackers set the house on fire, using lighter fluid to ignite the blaze. They believed they had successfully erased all evidence of their crime. But unbeknownst to them, Terry Caffey was clinging to life. Despite his severe injuries, including multiple gunshot wounds, Terry managed to crawl out of the burning house. His sheer willpower drove him to seek help from a neighbor who called 911. Terry's survival would prove critical in unraveling the truth behind the massacre. Meanwhile, Erin's role remained ambiguous. She was discovered at a trailer owned by Charlie's family, claiming she had been kidnapped and drugged. Initially, she presented herself as a victim, but as investigators began piecing the story together, a different narrative emerged. In the days that followed, authorities arrested Charlie, Charles, and Bobby. Their confessions painted a grim picture of Erin's involvement. According to their accounts, Erin had been the one who suggested killing her family, a detail that would shock even the most seasoned investigators. The small town of Alba was rocked to its core. The gruesome nature of the crime, coupled with Erin's alleged betrayal, left the community in disbelief. How could a girl raised in such a loving home conspire to destroy it? The survivors, particularly Terry Caffey, faced an uphill battle in coming to terms with the events of that night. While investigators worked tirelessly to gather evidence, one question loomed large: was Erin truly the mastermind, or had she been manipulated by Charlie into becoming a pawn in his deadly scheme? In the days following the brutal murders, the truth about what had transpired in the Caffey household began to unravel. Terry Caffey's survival was the key to exposing the crime, and his testimony gave investigators their first major leads. He described his attackers with chilling clarity, pointing to Charlie Wilkinson and Charles Wade as the culprits. The police quickly tracked down Wilkinson, who was found in a trailer alongside his girlfriend, Erin Caffey. At first, Erin presented herself as a victim. She claimed she had been kidnapped by Charlie and his friends, drugged, and forced to comply with their plan. But as law enforcement pressed for details, her story began to fall apart. Her demeanor shifted under scrutiny, and inconsistencies in her account raised red flags. The arrest of Charlie Wilkinson and his accomplices revealed a shocking twist. Both Charlie and Charles Wade confessed to their roles in the attack, but they didn't stop there. They claimed that Erin had not only been aware of the plan, but had orchestrated it. According to their statements, it was Erin's resentment toward her parents that fueled the horrific scheme. The most damning evidence came from Charlie himself. He described how Erin had repeatedly expressed her desire to be free of her parents, claiming they were too controlling and stood in the way of her relationship. What he presented as casual comments from Erin were, in his mind, instructions, a green light to act on her behalf. During the trial, prosecutors painted Erin as the mastermind, while her defense argued she was a manipulated, impulsive teenager. The testimony of a former boyfriend added further weight to the prosecution's case. He described Erin's growing rebellion and her willingness to use others to achieve her goals. The courtroom drama was intense, with each side presenting conflicting narratives about Erin's role in the crime. Was she a victim of manipulation, or was she the true architect of her family's demise? Ultimately, the jury was convinced of Erin's complicity. She was sentenced to life in prison without parole for her role in the murders. Charlie Wilkinson, Charles Wade, and Bobby Johnson also received lengthy sentences for their parts in the crime. The trial left a community shattered, raising questions about accountability, the influence of toxic relationships, and the pressures placed on young people. After the trial, the focus shifted from the brutal crime to the long and painful process of healing. For Terry Caffey, the lone survivor of the attack, this journey was one of unimaginable grief, introspection, and ultimately, forgiveness. Terry had lost everything: his wife, his 2 sons, and the home they had built together. In the wake of the murders, he struggled to comprehend how his own daughter could have been involved. The emotional weight was almost unbearable, yet Terry found solace in his unwavering faith. He turned to his Christian beliefs, clinging to the idea that forgiveness was the only path to inner peace. In a move that shocked many, Terry chose to forgive Erin. He visited her in prison, not to confront her, but to extend the love and forgiveness that his faith had taught him. Over time, Terry began to rebuild a relationship with his daughter. Their conversations were marked by raw honesty and emotional pain, as Terry sought to understand the events that had destroyed their family. Erin, too, reflected deeply on her actions. Now serving a life sentence, she admitted to making impulsive and destructive decisions as a teenager but continued to deny being the mastermind behind the crime. Her time in prison became a period of introspection. Erin expressed remorse for what had happened, stating that her first act upon release, if that day ever came, would be to visit her family's graves and seek their forgiveness. Terry's decision to forgive Erin was polarizing. While some praised his strength and faith, others questioned how he could forgive someone who had been complicit in such a horrific act. The community of Alba remained divided, with many struggling to reconcile Terry's decision with their own feelings of anger and betrayal. Through his journey of forgiveness, Terry became an advocate for faith and healing. He spoke publicly about the power of forgiveness, not as a means of excusing wrongdoing, but as a way of freeing oneself from the chains of hatred and resentment. His story inspired many, but it also sparked intense debates about justice, accountability, and the limits of forgiveness. In the years since the tragedy, Terry has continued to honor the memories of his wife and sons. While he can never forget what happened, his decision to forgive Erin has allowed him to move forward, carrying their love with him every step of the way. The story of Erin Caffey and her family is a haunting reminder of the fragility of human relationships and the devastating consequences of unchecked emotions. It's a case that forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about family, love, and the complex interplay between choice and influence. For Erin, her actions as a teenager will define the rest of her life. Whether she was the mastermind or a victim of manipulation, the results of that fateful night are irreversible. Her story serves as a cautionary tale about the power of toxic relationships and the dangerous consequences of impulsive decisions. Terry Caffey's journey of survival, grief, and forgiveness is equally powerful. His decision to forgive Erin has been both inspiring and polarizing, raising profound questions about the nature of healing and the limits of forgiveness. Through his unwavering faith, Terry has shown that even in the face of unimaginable loss, there can be a path forward. This case remains a tragic example of how love and loyalty can take a dark and destructive turn. Let us remember the victims and the lessons their story offers.